Hey, welcome back to the shop. This is Zach over at NV Woodworks. Today we're going to be making a resin cast bowl. Alright, so for the first step of this, obviously you need to cast the bowl blank. Now, I was really not too excited about casting a gigantic square thing for the blank. I got a really good tip from Brendan Stemp. I'll have a link to his YouTube channel and the video where you can find his video on doing this, but basically he just uses a plastic bowl for the mold and then he uses wood chunks, but in my case I use pine cones, arrange them around the edge, and then you put a pine blank, I guess, or something like that, a pine plug in the middle that's kind of shaped like a bowl. Put that in the center, it holds all the wood and everything around the edge, and then you pour the resin in. Now what you end up with is, you know, the resin's going to stick to that pine, so it gives you something easy to mount to when you're chucking it up on the face plate, I guess, on the lathe. And then it gives you something really simple and easy to core out for the middle of the bowl, and you're not wasting a bunch of resin. Excellent, excellent idea. So again, I'll have a link to Brendan's video on that in the show notes. So for the blank design, I decided to go with a pen blank design that I actually have in my store called Alpine, and it's a white resin with like a seafoam green and a teal blue, and then pine cones embedded in it. It's one of my favorite pen blanks that I sell, and so I wanted to make a bowl that matched that basically. So I got all that stuff ready. Now I used Alumilite clear slow set to just give me a little bit more open time, and just in case anything weird happened while I was trying to cast this thing. It worked out perfect, everything went great, and then I put it in the pressure pot. Now I waited about a week before I did anything with the turning. I just wanted to make sure that the resin was fully cured and everything was ready to go. Now I didn't use stoner mold release on that bowl mold, and I ended up having to kind of cut it off. So I didn't really think it was fully adhered to the resin because it was melamine and it shouldn't be, you know, fully stuck on or, you know, embedded onto the resin. So I just carefully turned the rim of that melamine bowl off, and then I was able to just jam like a scraper underneath there and just kind of pop everything off. So if that happens to you, just watch out with, depending on what kind of bowl you use for the mold. It may stick, but it may not really be fully stuck to the resin, and if you start turning it from the bottom, it may kind of fly off. So just be careful with that. Once I had that melamine bowl taken off, it was time to shape the bottom of the bowl. So I used my new Tommy G Workshop carbide tools, and they worked fabulously, and I just shaped the bottom and got around the rim and got all the kind of bottom side of everything shaped and ready to go. Once I had the bottom of the bowl shaped, I put a spigot in the bottom so I could grab it with my 4-jaw chuck, and I put a little bit of a dovetail indentation in there, and used the Tommy G carbide tool, the detail tool for that, and it worked perfect. Unfortunately, I miscalculated that pine plug, and it was a little bit too far embedded into the mold, and I ended up cutting in through when I was making that spigot, and I found pine in the middle of my bowl. So that's one thing, one tip I will say is make sure that that pine plug is not going too far down in your mold. Leave about an inch and a half of room in the bottom so that you don't run into that. Now I was able to fix that at the end, and I kind of covered it up, but and it worked fine. I'm not unhappy with it necessarily, but I came up with a kind of a good fix for that. But just make sure in the future you don't want to do that. When I was done shaping the back and I got the spigot in, I sanded the back side of the bowl up to 1000 grit just to make sure it was all ready and I didn't have to do anything else after I flipped it to the front. So that thing was all ready, and then once it was done, I mounted the 4-jaw chuck on there and then flipped it and started coring out the center. Now, I use a traditional bowl gouge to do the coring of that pine. It's just a more natural motion for me, and it hogged it out real quick. And then once I was back to resin, basically, I switched back over to the carbide tools from Tommy G, and they worked fabulously. It was real simple, easy, and got the shaping done on the inside, and then I was ready to kind of work on some of the minor details. Once I had the inside shape done, I filled some of the little pit marks that were in the pine cones. They have kind of little holes here and there. I just filled those with a thicker CA glue, I think the gel, and then just gave it a couple coats of CA glue, the thin stuff, just to kind of fill any little pits or anything like that in there. Kind of get it ready and smoothed out so that I could just apply a lacquer finish at the end. Once that was all done, the CA glue was dried, then I just sanded the inside to 1000, and then it was time to fix my mistake with that pine. I figured the easiest way to cover up the pine was just to add more resin on the inside. I also wanted to, on the bottom, I wanted to try just painting it with acrylic paint and just see how that looked. Now in the end, the resin fix worked really well. The acrylic paint didn't look that good, but at least I did that on the bottom, and I kind of had a feeling that wouldn't look so great. I would recommend, if you have to do this, use resin, just mix it up and just kind of pour in a thin layer, and everything worked out good. Once the resin set up for that patch, or the cover up, I just kind of sanded it a little bit, used some scrapers, and just blended the edges where it kind of met the existing resin, just to kind of try and make it look like it wasn't a fix. It worked pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. It wasn't perfect, but you know, considering the alternative is having a giant pine thing in the bottom, it looks pretty good, especially if you're not looking at it really close. Once everything was done with the blending, I just sanded that up to 1000 grit, and it was ready to finish it. Now for the finish, I used Deft spray lacquer, and I just used a gloss. I put on about 5 coats of, you know, on each side of it, inside and out, and it worked great. It looked perfect, and it was really shiny, and you know, it was a good finish for this bowl. I think it would have been really difficult putting like a CA finish on it. It just would have taken forever to add enough coats, and you know, it's drying on you. So much easier just to put it down there and spray it. Now I used my spray booth, my kind of makeshift spray booth that I made a while ago, to actually spray paint the pen tubes before casting things, and that thing works out great. All it is it's a box fan, and I have a paint filter, so it's like a filter that you would actually use in a spray booth. I bought some of those. They're kind of expensive, but they work really good. And all I did was just put some Velcro around the edge, and then stick that paint filter over the fan, and then just turn on the fan. Now I just covered it with, made some edges with cardboard, and everything worked great. And I just have a little Lazy Susan that I use to kind of turn the bowl around. It's a great setup. I'm actually going to be doing kind of a better version of that, a little bit nicer version made out of wood soon, so be looking for that video down the road. Alright, well, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I learned some lessons. Obviously you need to watch how deep that wood plug goes in your blank. I kind of screwed up a little bit. I didn't realize how deep or how far up I was going, so I would definitely leave a good at least inch and a half in the bottom, so that you don't run into that issue and you won't have to fix anything. But the fix worked pretty good. I kind of covered it up pretty well. You really can't tell what's going on at first glance, so I'm not too disappointed with it. Overall, for my first bowl that I've turned and first bowl blank I've made, I'd say that it turned out pretty good. So if you have any comments or questions, you can leave those down below. If you're new to the channel, definitely subscribe if you're into resin casting. I do all kinds of tutorial experiments and project type stuff dealing with resin casting. So subscribe if you want to get updates when all the new videos get posted. You can also follow along, check in, see what I'm up to kind of on a daily, weekly basis on Facebook and Twitter. See what kind of trouble I'm getting into in the shop. But until next time, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.